Welcome everyone to an overview of Advanced Tactics Gold. And what I want to do in this video is just give you an overview of what this game is and maybe illustrate the reasons why you should be playing it and playing it with me even. So the first thing to notice about this game is that it is one of those old hex-based war games, which can be, I think, a little intimidating to get into. What I want to stress about this one is, out of every wargame I played, it's just the most intuitive. It doesn't take very much to learn how to play it. It's very simple, but it's at the same time it somehow is very immersive and realistic. They model things in a very intuitive manner. So although there might be some complexity to it, it's not. You don't really feel the complexity because it fits like a glove. Like one thing I'll mention more is like supply. There is a supply, you have to keep troops supplied, and that always scares me in games, you know, like, oh gosh, what do I have to do? But in this game it's done very well, and you don't have to be scared about it. So, I'm going to start off by just mentioning what exactly we're looking at here. This is the map that I generated, just a random map I generated with 3 players. I did a single town start, which means that I was the Japanese. You can see I started in Kyoto. This is my capital city. I played against the French, people French, capital city over here, and the Germans in the north. So with a single town start, you only start off controlling a little bit of land, and you have to expand out everywhere, capture the cities to improve your production base, capture the raws and the oil, which are your other 2 resources besides just like raw production points from cities. And just by expanding out, you grow, and then you build your army. And eventually, upon expanding, you reach the enemy borders, and you engage in combat. So that was the design of this map. There were some issues with the AI, which I'm going to go into later. But overall, I had such a good time with this game that I decided to make this video about it. And I was even thinking about this game when I was driving to and from work. So that's really a good sign for a game when I'm thinking about it, even when I'm not playing it. Okay, so what's the scale of this game? You can see there's cities and there's mountains and, I don't know, the mountain chains, the roads. I don't know exactly what the scale is. Like, I can't tell you what's the, like, what does 1 hex represent in distance. But I can see that the cities I turned off, they're suburban, so I turned off the multi-hex cities, essentially. Normally these would have maybe 1 or 2 hexes more. If that gives you an idea of what like Paris would be represented as 3 hexes perhaps, then maybe you can do some area computation and come up with yourself. But I don't know, it just makes sense to me that whatever the scale is, you just deal with it. It's an abstraction anyway. And as far as like unit size goes, each one of these chits, or that's what we used to call them when you actually played with, I actually played with these hex-based board games back in the day, and these counters, I suppose you might say. Each one of these is a division. We can see the 22nd division. It should be probably the 2nd armored division, but I didn't choose to rename things based on armored or mechanized or just infantry normal divisions. So one of these contains, you know, maybe 40 or 50 units as a typical stack. That's what I saw against the enemy as well. Unfortunately, I don't have many good examples left because I've killed most of the French forces here. But you can see they have like 30 engineers in this stack, and that's like their typical size. Over here they have like, this is a very typical stack size, around 40 to 50. And that's kind of how I modeled my infantry as well, to make them around 40 to 50. So let's see, I have machine guns here, which are, this is about 50 as well. So these are all the stack sizes. What does one of these units represent? Well, it doesn't actually represent 1 AT gun or 1 rifleman. That's clear. But I don't know what size unit this is abstracted to. I think it's maybe a company, because if you had 50 companies in a division, does that make sense? I don't know. I was originally thinking platoon, but I think platoon is actually too big. That 50 platoons in a division seems like a good deal too many. Okay, so that's just the size issue. And I talked about the setup for this game. So let's just talk about some of the gameplay mechanics, because that's the exciting thing about this. The first thing I want to mention, and I'll do this first of all, I'm going to turn off the hex coloring. So in this game I'm almost dominating the whole map. This game has almost come to an end. But if I turn off hex coloring, I'm going to show you the supply thing, which is one of my favorite things about this game. Because normally I really do hate supplying games. It's like kind of a pain in the butt to manage. But this game makes it feel really like it's not a pain in the butt, but it's still very immersive. Alright, so if I just by selecting this is my Supreme headquarters, so it's far back from the front. A cool thing they do is they will color code your unit counters based on the headquarters that they're underneath. So my Supreme headquarters has a few backline city guards, but mainly it only controls its subordinate units. If I go to statistics over here and order of battle, I can see that the main thing that is subordinate to the Supreme HQ are the other HQs, which are going to hold most of my troops. These hold the Supreme holds just a few backline troops that aren't near the front. Okay, so the color-coded headquarters is significant because the units trace their supply from the headquarters that they're directly attached underneath. We can see that if I wanted to go to supply mode, this or F5, I can see by right-clicking that this unit is tracing its supply from the main headquarters. And if I click on the main headquarters, you can see that from the units it's supplying, there was 3,000 supplies requested and 3,000 sent out. So that means I'm making enough supplies currently. I have a big supply stockpile. But without going into like how to make all the different supplies, that's a little more complicated. Actually, it's not complicated, it's simple. You just go to production and you produce it. But it's not important for the overview. I think it's really neat how, for example, let's talk about this. So this guy is supposedly in yellow if he was to be supplied from this purple HQ. The good news is he's a yellow, so he's under the yellow HQ, which is my western HQ. These guys all kind of got jumbled up at some point. I mean, the headquarters were well established over here, where my front really was, where I first started fighting the French. But I've taken over so much territory, and just in the midst of all the combat and the tactical maneuvering, you end up with this kind of thing where a tank jumps south of my yellow. I mean, they aren't compartmentalized exactly the way an OCD person might have it. It's not all the yellow down here anymore because, I don't know, I had to send these purple engineers in because I need to build roads, and I had to send this tank down here for some reason, and guys are kind of swapping up. This yellow armored unit, I thought I could break through and take Amiens without a fight, but it turns out that there are a few units up here. And this is my kind of Patton-like move. If you remember, there's these famous stories about Patton outrunning his own supplies with his tank advances. And I think it's so cool that that's actually modeled into this game. That kind of happened to me, which is why I have all these weird roads being built. You can see that if I zoom out once more, I've been using the numpad minus and plus, but I'll just use this to show you. And if I turn off supply mode for a second, I have tons of roads. That's because when you look at the supply, if I turn it back on, and once again, I'm just going to select this unit, which is my headquarters. I'm going to zoom in, and let's go over to this guy. So if I do this and I right click over here, what is this one highlighted for? That's some weird bug. But it's showing me that this, in this bottom little description bar, it says 46 AP out of 250. So it's 87 AP out of 250 for my supplies to move from this guy to this tank. The reason why it's not moving up is because to jump from this square to this square, I don't have a road connection yet. That's what this engineer is working on, but it doesn't have enough action points left to do it this turn. So from this unit, it's more efficient. Oh, I see. I'm calculating supply from there. So let me do it from here. There. Now you can see it's tracing it along this road instead of going up because of the lack of road connection currently, which will be fixed next turn. But it just shows you how much more efficient it is, and these roads are an abstraction of like a main transportation vein. On the map themselves, they're graphically drawn as like a railroad, but they do also represent main roads that trucks and tanks could drive down. Excuse me. So we see this guy is at 89 AP out of 250. If you go into over 100 to 150, you get to yellow, which means 25% of the supplies you sent, you do send them, but they're lost. I kind of think of this for immersion reasons as the supplies you're sending are actually being consumed by the people who have to deliver them because they're so far away. And it gets worse if you go into, let's see, this blue, which is 50% supply penalty. In order to get over here, 50% of the supplies I would be sending would be consumed by the supply deliverers, at least in my version of the abstraction. And I don't have any red, but if we had red anywhere, which I've just done such a good job with my roads I don't happen to have, that would be a 75% penalty. Beyond that, you just receive 0 supplies. So it's almost to your advantage not to supply units that are so far out of supply they consume so much supply getting there, and only receive a quarter of it. Or the best thing you can do is just not have units out of supply. Anyway, I found that if you don't even look at this map and you just kind of intuitively don't try to move too far ahead of your headquarters, you'll be in good shape. But it's just fun to look at that map, and it's well graphically designed to show you how you're getting supply and stuff. And for that reason, I built so many roads, because I have my engineers up at the front. It's actually something I had to consider. I need to move forward with my armored units, so in order to move armored forward, I'm going to need some roads behind them to actually deliver supplies. Because my headquarters can't move fast enough, and even if they can, I don't want them to move off of the road tiles, because the way they're supplied directly, and the way I move actual units to the front, is my Supreme headquarters can transfer units with all of the many 35 trains it has. And it has some 6 trucks which can allow it to go off the railroad tiles a little bit. But obviously the main supply mode from the Supreme headquarters to the subordinate headquarters is by train, because trains can carry a lot, and then the combat headquarters are the ones that are going to carry some more trucks, like 8 trucks, because they don't need trains. All of their supply is from the railroad off the railroad to the actual front. And that seems really realistic, right? In the real world, you would train to the front, or, I mean, back in the day, you would train to the front. And then after that, you would actually take a truck, or you'd walk to the front from there. So it feels really real. Now, supply and movement are linked in that it relates to this action point cost. If I go to, for example, my cavalry here, they have 100 action points left, and this is typically what you start at the beginning of a turn. If I go ahead and hit M for move, or in this case I'll just press this button, it brings up our gray area, which is where this horse can move. Now this is just a 3 cavalry unit stack, so it's a really small reconnaissance. I kind of use this just to take unoccupied enemy territory, so that's its main purpose, especially at the beginning of the game when you just want to expand, and cavalry is really good at moving. So I'm going to hit escape on this and actually select this guy and show you the movement of an infantry, which is your standard unit, right? We notice that in friendly territory, it's usually around 30 to move through almost anything for infantry. It does, however, cost 60 to go into the mountains across a stream, which is 40 for the mountains and 20 additional because we're moving across a stream to move into this hex. And this is all like modeled, it's very intuitive. Okay, wow, so I'm moving from here to here, and I can barely move a little bit further. But just if you don't care about calculating all this stuff yourself, you could just hit the move hex, and it'll bring up this gray grid of where you can move. Now this guy, what I actually want to do with this unit on this turn is move him closer to the front. I think I just wiped out some forces in these mountains, and now I'm moving to the front. So I want to move him forward, and similarly with this cavalry, I probably want to move him to maybe an unoccupied area, possibly this oil, which doesn't have, from what I can see, any units in it. So that might be a good objective for this cavalry, because cavalry's, not that it's weak in combat, but it's weak in combat if it only has 3 units. Remember, typical units are around 40. And like I said, I'm guessing that that's about a company size. So that's movement. And what's even better is if you want to attack, the movement orders give you red arrows from the places that you can attack. So sometimes I was wondering at the beginning of the game, can I move here and still attack? And then I realized that the red arrows will indicate for you, if you just press move, the places you can attack from and to, given your total number of action points left. We can see after movement that these guys were at 100, but now they're down to 10. That's because it costs 90. Cavalry costs 15 action points to move into almost any normal hex, which includes moving along a road. So there's no advantage for these moving along grass or along field or even along a road. Now it is an advantage to move along road if you're going over marsh, because then it takes the lower action point cost between the road and the marsh. And in this case, that's always going to be the road. Now, for the attack, when I hit move, I can see that there's enough action points remaining if I were to move here to attack still into the city. And I can see if I select this guy and hit move, the same thing is true. If I was to move into the mountains, this armored car unit would not have enough action points left to attack the city. So let's actually attack, so I can demonstrate that too. I'm going to click on the place I want to attack and hit attack, which is either A or just selecting that button. Now, what I could do is just click this all button, which means send everybody who has the available number of action points remaining, into the attack. That doesn't mean that they have to move in, which I'll show you afterwards. It can be just a supporting attack roll. But if I do none for a second, I can actually just choose which units I want. So if I choose this northwestern hex of the city, that gives me my machine gun unit. And the artillery gun, the anti-tank guns aren't going to be very useful because if we look at the city, we can see here's a stack of like 85. Here's a stack of 10, and then here's some. Actually, this is a headquarter unit, but it has no actual. It's just without staff, so it's pretty useless. So attacking by myself, this unit has an attack stack of 72, which is just like some kind of addition. I think each of these rifles only cost 1 stack. Machine guns cost 1, but maybe anti-tanks cost a bunch. I can verify that you can click on any unit you want to bring up all the stats, which is very convenient. So I can see that the general stats is this one will consume 6 supplies each. It weighs 10. If I want to do it to horses, I can see that their general stats is they carry 10. So what I'm doing in this case is I'm actually moving these anti-tank guns. I'm pulling them by horse. This unit doesn't move at the speed of artillery, which is very, very slow. If I click on this artillery, you can see the penalties for even just moving a planes is 50. So unless you're moving on plains or along a road, you can only move 1 hex at a time. But this unit can move much better than that because you can see it can move you can even move 4 on this turn if I wanted, because the artillery here is being pulled by horse. And that's just another cool mechanic. If I go down to, is it analysis? Yeah. Not all of my land is being carried, but it's going to carry the slowest first. So we see the artillery has a weight of 40, and my horses can carry 40, so all 40 artillery being carried. It's just very cool dynamic that you can choose how to carry your artillery, or you can choose to load up troops on, if I select this armored car unit, each of these armored cars, all 5 of them, each of them has 5 weight that they can carry, and every land unit is 1. So I have 19 here, and I have 25 available. So we can see that 19 out of 25 are all carried, which means that this unit, although it has a lot of infantry, they're all being like carried on top of the armored cars. So this is moving with the rate of a wheel, which means I can go very far. And I love that. So you can do these like combined arms type forces in a very smart way. It's done very cleverly. Alright, so I did bomb this already with artillery, and if this was like a real game that I was taking very seriously, I would probably just continue to bomb this with artillery. But let's just showcase the attack that I started. Let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to select this unit, and I'm going to select this unit, which is the same as just selecting all. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit attack. Just to explain what's going on here, if you attack from more than 1 hex, you do get this concentric bonus. The more surrounded a unit is, the more you're flanking it, so the more of a bonus you get to your attack. Now it's saying because they're in a city and I'm attacking just along like 120 degrees, it's only a 10% bonus. Let's go ahead and do the attack. Here's the graphical update as we go round by round. So we see the attacker 1 in combat round 5, and this just graphically displays what happened. Casualties means their units are eliminated, and retreat means they're still alive, but they're no longer participating in the attack. Now because I won, all the defenders are going to pull back to the hex beyond. They're going to retreat into one of the hexes, like not at the front. I know because there's only 2 hexes left in this area that they're going to pull back to the one last peninsula hex on the northeast, but I'll show that in a sec. First, we'll just talk about that the yellow means that they were engaged. What I can see is that my anti-tank, they have the capacity to be behind the front lines. They have what's called rear. They can be in the rear. So if I looked at their general stats, they have the rear is a yes for them, or it might be their combat stats. Anyway, the point is they didn't engage in actual combat, they just fired from behind. I lost a very few units, and we can see that they lost a ton. But it's going to be a little weird to sit here and count, so my favorite view after a battle is done is to go to switch view. Now here we can see the overview of what happened. For example, I started with 48 rifle 2s. At the end of the battle, 34 were still left in the attack. Of the 14 that didn't remain in the attack, 4 are dead and 10 retreated, which means they just pulled back in the attack. They were too disorganized. So although only 34 remain in the attack, of the initial 48, 44 are still alive. I only lost 4. Similarly with submachine guns and machine guns, and now we go down to theirs. They had an initial of 93, and 65 died. So it means they only have 28 remaining, all of which retreated. This is kind of just a massacre. If I kind of counted my units up, we would see that I lost 13 total, and they lost 65. And that's, although machine guns are slightly more expensive, and even submachine guns are just 10% more expensive than normal rifles, this is a pretty huge loss for them. The amount of production capacity that has been spent and died is much greater for them than it is for me, which is kind of how I like to view things. Well, if I close this, we are now taken to the option of choosing who in that attack was a supporting attack and who is going to actually move in. Now, it makes sense that in a city I would move in my submachine guns because these fight much better in urban hexes, and also if I can just showcase some forest here. So this forest right here is also considered close quarters enough where submachine guns would get their advantage. So I'm definitely moving my submachine guns in. Now if I hit that move key again, M, you can see that I actually have enough action points remaining to continue attacking onto this northeast peninsula area. But I'm not going to do that because we already saw one attack, and to be honest, if I want to wait until next turn, I can bomb them with artillery first, which would be very effective. It'll just decrease the amount of casualties I'll take in my attack. I'm also going to move the machine gun in because, I mean, the cities are very important. They produce lots of, so you can see that this one has 6,400 production points that I'm going to be able to use. Now, because it's a French city and not a Japanese city, which is my regime, I won't be able to use all of the production points, but still I can use them to increase my political points. Now, I've spent a long time just discussing attack and move, and that's a lot of fun. Basically, that's the most fun part of the game, right? Is you're attacking and you're flanking and doing all these things, and it's very interesting. But I want to cover a few more things very briefly. So let's go back to a few of the problems I had with the AI. This map does start with this island up here, and although we can see that the typical stack size is probably around 50, the stack size for this unit's, like, if my combat effectiveness is considered 63, 28, 28, you know, like 106 over here, 137 is big. They have some over here which are insane, because Germany never left their little island. Now I want to say that I have this unit here which is way behind front line. Why is that? The French, and this is awesome, the French actually did an amphibious landing behind my front lines all the way over here, and this was just a turn ago. I just this turn recaptured all the territory from it. All I had to do was move in a bunch of dive bombers and fighters because they had no air support over here. However, I did have to move another unit back as well to actually recapture the territory. So that it was just really cool that the French were intelligent enough to conduct this amphibious invasion behind my front lines. I just was amazed by that. It's so cool. Unfortunately, the Germans never left their island here, so I think there might be something bugged with AI, like how they know how to move or land or anything. Because you can see that the 536, it's like 10 times a normal stack. It's huge. I'm not even sure if the Germans technically are producing enough supply to even just supply this one unit. That's so much supply wasted just in on one division. And this Hex, this city of theirs, Prebitz, has a lot of these units in it. That's kind of absurd. And I know this is just some bug, and the company who makes this game, the group who makes this game, is not very large. So I'm not expecting too much, especially because AI is really the hardest thing to program. It's easy to set up game rules, but how do you get a new artificial intelligence to follow these rules? It's definitely a very difficult task. Unfortunately, this is just my way of saying if you're going to play, don't play with an island. And I'll showcase that in the next video, which is how to set up a game. The other thing I want to say is when I designed this game originally, I started with us at this triangle type configuration, me in the right, French in the left, and Germany in the north. I wanted us each to expand about evenly and meet in the middle and have this massive three-way battle. Unfortunately, from the strategic information map, F1, we can see with diplomacy that I'm at war with both the AIs. But Charlemagne and the Austrian Empire, the two other AIs, are at peace with each other. They never declared war, and I don't know if AIs ever declare war on each other. So to force this, I'm also going to showcase how to change diplomacy when you're starting up your random game in the next video. However, if you want to actually see the gameplay, how this develops, I'm going to do another Let's Play. I'm going to do a full Let's Play, starting with the very beginning of a one-town start and moving all the way through. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in either of those things, look for those videos. Otherwise, if you just want to know what this game's about, I hope I was able to convince you that it's a really, really wonderful game. Like, what are the adjectives I can use to describe this game? I just want to reiterate again that it's the kind of game I was thinking about on the way to and from my work, and that's the best praise I can give it. It makes you feel like you really are a commander in the field, having to deal with realistic issues with supply and which hexes to go into, and all these things. So I didn't really cover political points, which is basically your research and decision tree. Like you can see that I chose because I went to costly research and Stone Age. I started with almost nothing researched, and I had to research all these things myself. And that was kind of fun because I had to choose a direction. For example, in mine, I kind of bumped up standard tanks and machine guns. Those are the two things I focused on. So this unit basically exemplifies what I decided to do. I first had to buy light tanks in research, which just was an expenditure of political points. And then I had to buy machine guns and machine gun 2s and machine gun 3s and standard light tank 2s, which means that these are pretty highly upgraded units. Now the AI, the French, I don't know if they're coded to do this because it makes sense from a French perspective, but they decided to specialize in artillery. We can't see it here. Here's an example. This hex right here I think is heavy artillery, or I may have just crushed it with this tank unit, but they first of all have heavy artillery. Now I've hit F2 to go to decision room. I don't have heavy artillery. We can see it's something that I have choose to forego in an effort to increase my light tanks and my machine guns. And they also just chose to research infantry guns, which going back to research screen, you notice I don't even have infantry gun 1, and they have infantry gun 2. So the French decided to go with this artillery focus, and unfortunately that has been pretty strongly countered by my armor. So if there's like kind of rock, paper, scissors thing, cavalry in the old days beats siege weapons, right? So that's kind of my example here is my tanks are overrunning their artillery before their artillery can they're not digging in for long enough for their artillery to be effective. But that whole decision is awesome. Like, it gives you the opportunity to decide, what do I want to focus on? Which is why I prefer that slow build-up and that heavy cost to research, because you can't specialize in everything. You really have to choose what is the path I perceive myself going down. And you kind of have to analyze, well, the French didn't do a very good job in this case, but this is mostly open plains, so although I was expecting the fighting to happen here, I knew that if I was able to break through, armor would be the best thing to push forward. And that's why I have these engineers at the front, because I need to build those roads to support them. Anyway, I might be talking in circles at this point, just bringing up these things again because I think they're so cool. So I'll go ahead and conclude this overview of Advanced Tactics Gold here. I look forward to any of your comments, and you guys can look forward to the next video, which will be how to set up a random game, and then following that I'll actually begin my Let's Play from turn 1. So thanks for watching.